Hey everybody, Eric Grenier here with Philippe J. Fournier for this week's episode of The Numbers. We chatted a little bit before we started recording. It was a heartbreaking night last night if you're watching the hockey game, and you just opted out in a way rather than go through the pain.
I play hockey on Wednesday nights, so I had much more fun playing than watching, so it's all good.
Could you have put some more pucks on the net? Should you have been playing?
Maybe, but I suck. So, I used to be a goalie, so no. We will have a little hockey corner at the end of this episode because there are diverging opinions on whether you and I should talk hockey. I think we should, but maybe not leading off the episode. So, but it's all good. Mitch Marner is going to win the cup and the Connie Smythe, and everybody's going to be happy in Leafland. So.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the silver lining. Okay, we got lots to talk about today.
Oh, yes, we do. Yes.
And we are going to start with, I think, the biggest thing that's happened over the last week. And it just happened, I think, hours after our last recording. And that is, as everybody by now knows, that Alberta will be having a referendum on October 19th. It will be a referendum that is asking, and the wording of the question, I don't have it in front of me, but it is, should Alberta remain in Canada, or should the government of Alberta begin the process to meet the constitutional requirements to have Alberta separate from the country? So it is a little bit of a convoluted question that is about having a referendum for keeps later on.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, just like in 1980 and 1995 in Quebec, despite the question wording being a little bit all over the place, people know what they're voting for, I think, for the most part. Okay. For the most part, anyway. But this is going to reverberate around Canadian politics for the next 4.5 months. It's going to, 5 months. It's really going to be a bit of a sprint. And I think this is going to have some issues for Danielle Smith and the United Conservative Party, for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, for Mark Carney and the Liberals. So we should probably dive right into it. Were you surprised at all that this happened?
Well, not really. I'm surprised by the wording of the question. So basically, it's the best of three, right? So asking the question when all the public opinion polls that we've had, and from not just from Eastern firms, as I was told many times by Albertans. But from all over the place, show that most Albertans do not want this. But this is a conservative issue. It's not a conservative versus progressive. This is not a left versus right. This is conservatives infighting in Alberta, and not to reduce it to just that, but mostly urban versus rural, like very much urban versus rural. And it's for saving the life of the UCP. Now, obviously, what will transpire from that, we don't know. So those who say, it's going to be 75-25, I just don't think you can predict such a thing. Many things will happen in the next 4 months, Eric. We will follow the numbers, continuously, of course. But when it's much harder to make the case for federalism than it is to brandy words like freedom and like independence. Like everybody, I mean, they want. Danielle Smith, one of her first acts was to pass the Sovereignty Act within a united Canada. So basically. We want to be sovereign, but within Canada. We want the advantages of Canada, but without all the negotiations so. The numbers are interesting. There was a poll done by the Angus Reid Institute, like right after. It was the first poll that had the actual wording of the question in the questionnaire. Eric, I don't know if you want to get into that, or if you had the words before we get into the numbers, or what do you think of what's happening?
Well, I do agree with what has to be behind this, because, as you mentioned, the UCP doesn't have an actual electoral mandate to do this. Voters have suggested in polls they don't want it. Yeah. There was a petition that had 300,000. Another one had 400,000. They've said that counts as 700,000. We don't actually know if there is any duplicates on those among those names. That is still a very low number of people to start a referendum process. That, again, doesn't have an electoral mandate. The Parti Québécois, if they win in Quebec's election in the fall, will win potentially with 32% of the vote, but at least there's an electoral mandate behind it. Regardless, that's the system we have, so that's playing by the rules there. But even the petition, the threshold for the petition had been reduced by the government, and it is an arbitrary number. There's no particular reason why that level of signatures should be the threshold. And then when you look at what's happening within the UCP, it is hard not to conclude that this is largely about that. Because when we hear Danielle Smith talk about how, letting Albertans be able to express themselves, there's a portion of the population that really wants to have their voice heard on this. They are all almost entirely located within the UCP. And we've seen that through polling, which we'll get into in a little bit. We've heard that, the separatist leader, Mitch Sylvester, doesn't like the question and is going to try to remove Danielle Smith because she's not going straight up for independence in this question. At first, you saw the party president, I think his name is Rob Smith, no relation, first saying that, a lot of our members will support independence, so the party's going to take a neutral stance on this. And it took yesterday for Premier Smith to go on the radio, the other Smith, to go on the radio and say, no, my position is this, and this is going to be the position of the party. And then apparently the party put out a statement late last night, more or less saying, oh, yeah, we're gonna agree with our leader. These dynamics, I think, are largely internal. All the, you can dress it up in democratic, expression and all this kind of stuff. It is very clearly about managing this group of people within the party that could hurt the party's chances of beating the NDP, that if there's a split, the NDP would win. And for a lot of conservatives in Alberta, that is worse. That is a worse option than Alberta separating from the country. So I think I think it's being too generous to Danielle Smith to interpret this in any other way. Could it be a negotiating tactic to try to get more stuff out of the federal government? Maybe. It's already going pretty well. So I'm not sure if they also need to go to the next step with the referendum. But this is going to be a rollicking 5 months in Alberta. Now, the numbers, let's get into it. Now, you kind of not scoffed, but, made a little smirk, which, it's how this podcast works. When I mentioned that the question, people know what they're voting for. The Angus Reid Institute had a poll on this. It does suggest that the question wording will have an impact.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And also the fact that it's non-binding and that if you vote yes, there will be another chance to change your mind. Of course, it changes the numbers. I mean, it's there's no surprise there. So the numbers from the Angus Reid Institute. So they put the question, should Alberta remain a province of Canada, or should the government of Alberta commence the legal process required under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding provincial referendum on whether or not Alberta should separate from Canada? 37 words. And across Alberta, 60% would vote no, which is a clear no, but it's not an overwhelming no. 30% would vote yes. That means beginning the process.
Even that's kind of confusing, that the no and the yes, you have to explain what the no and the yes is. Like, I assume on the ballot it'll be Alberta remain, start process or something like that. But we can't even say like the yes camp, the no camp, because it's not clear what the yes or the no is here. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a 60 to 35% split, with 5% undecideds. Usually the undecideds, at least in the numbers that we had in Quebec, and not, I know it doesn't apply everywhere, but mostly undecideds would go for the status quo. But when you look at UCP voters, it's 64% in favor of beginning the process, 30% to stay in Canada. It's a 2-to-1, and so. There's a clear majority, yeah.
It's even more dramatic because that's people who voted for the Conservatives in 2023.
Yes.
If you look at the people who are currently voting for it, it's 69-23 in terms of support for the departure option. But yes, it's a pretty stark divide.
Like, you would think, okay, so mostly Quebec sovereigntists have always... I want to say, I'm going to be careful with my words here, but they have mostly played by the rules. Yes, the questions were not really clear, and they did what they had to do to have the best score possible and to win. But this is going a little... I don't know. Do you really think that they're going to play by the rules? I mean, we know that many of separatists in Alberta, many of them in the polls, we see that they love Donald Trump, and many of them want to join the United States, and basically they're inviting foreign interference openly and gladly. And so this is going to be 4 or 5 months of divisions, and it's not going to be fun for a lot of people. It's not going to be fun. I want to bring it back because the Calgary, Edmonton, and rest of Alberta, all these divisions, geographical, generational, are interesting. It's a majority everywhere against the referendum. In the regions, it's evenly split. But when the Angus Reid Institute ask, okay, but would you leave Canada or do you want to stay in Canada? Like the clear question, what should be the 8 or 9 word question? The numbers go from 60-35 to 67-30. So the lead of the pro-Canada camp goes from 25 points to 37 when you ask the clear question. And many people I talk to that have experience with the Clarity Act, there's many things that with the Clarity Act passed in the late 90s, or was it 2000 with Stéphane
It was like
Dion?
2000, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are many issues with this because provinces, including Quebec, will say, well, this is none of your business. The vote will be held in a province by this province, the residents of this province, and that's it. But I think the issue of clarity has not been disputed. Like the House of Commons should not dictate what a province can do. I think a lot of people would agree with that. But asking a clear question is pretty straightforward. How can you be against that? And by changing the question, by having a convoluted way to say, well, start the process, yes, you are confusing a fringe party of voters that will say, well, we'll stick with, we'll send a message to Ottawa. Whereas the message should be, do you want to leave or do you want to stay? But
I mean, that does kind of indicate what path the stay side has to take, right? Make it not about the process, make it about leaving, right?
Yeah.
That if you go down the road of starting the process, that you're already 1 foot out the door. So I think that's going to be sort of the challenge here. I do think that one of the reasons why this question is worded the way it is that they were going to have the referendum on immigration and constitutional issues on October 19th anyway.
Yeah.
And they wanted, I think, to have an independence question on the ballot. The courts had quashed the other question because it was it had too many implications that hadn't been dealt with yet in terms of consulting with First Nations and these kinds of things. Yeah. So this is a way to get a question where they can still get it on the ballot in time without having to deal with the courts, because it's like it's only about starting the process. It's like, should we start the process towards the consultation and all the steps that we'd have to follow to get a question that could pass the courts, get recognized by the Clarity Act, and then you vote and then you're gone. So it does, again, why was there a rush to put it on the ballot in the fall? There's no reason to rush it in the fall. You could do it in the spring. You could do it next year. You could do it 2 years. Yeah. It's, again, because of those internal party dynamics, which I think you see in this poll from the Angus Reid Institute that a lot of Albertans agree. There was a question of, is Danielle Smith handling this well or poorly? 37% said she's handling it well, which is not enough to win an election. 56% said she's handling it poorly. So I think that's one of the other aspects here. Yes, there's going to be some internal party ructions, I think that's the word, as the kind of the separatist wing tries to take over the party, which they could do. A lot of people seem to be kind of dismissive of that possibility, but I mean, they've shown that they can at least get 300,000 signatures. Can they get 300,000 UCP members? That's another question. But I think there's also going to be some electoral issues here. We haven't had a voting intentions poll for the last little while in Alberta. But, you know, if you look at some of the crosstabs in the Angus Reid Institute poll, it suggests that this is maybe a tied race.
Oh, there are voting intentions in that poll at the very end.
Oh, yeah. Okay, but they didn't. Yeah. Okay, I thought they were just in the crosstabs.
Yeah, hang on. No, I'll get it for you. They were there. It's just that they were not exposed in the article, but they were there in the tables, and it was a 1-point lead for the UCP. Yeah. It was so very, very close. It's just that we know that polls in Alberta, they're not always, I don't want to say not good, but they're not always that precise. And also, this is also very, the election's supposed to be in 2 years. So, 2 years?
Next year?
Year and a half. Yeah. So it's still very theoretical. And there are many voters who would vote to stay in Canada, but look at the option and says, "Oh, it's Mr. Nenshi and the NDP. Ugh, that's too much for me, right?" But I just want to clarify one thing I said when I said the playing by the rules. Like, playing by the rules here would mean that if Danielle Smith feels that she is threatened by her party to hold this referendum, like, you don't ask a referendum that you wish to lose.
Yeah.
Like, this is ridiculous, right? So she should say, you know what? Let's go into election. Let's go into election right now. I dissolve the assembly. Let's go into an election, and you will run on whether to hold a referendum, or you will run on saying, I'm not holding a referendum. And if you want to have a referendum, well, create your own separatist party and run against the UCP. But doing this during the mandate that you don't have, that she never campaigned on holding a non-binding referendum on separation, this is not playing by the rules.
By that you mean like the kind of the democratic rules, the rules of the game rather than the rules of the law.
We'll see about that. We'll see about that. But this is more than an election. This is very, very emotional. Having lived it in Quebec, you will have friends that won't speak to each other. You will have families that will start infighting. It's not just an election where at the Thanksgiving table, let's say, it's 1 week after Thanksgiving when people gather and eat turkey and spend time with their family. It's gonna get very ugly. And speak from experience here. I was a teenager in a split house, so. So to go back to the numbers, Anchor Street Institute. So this is the numbers of the clear question. Should Alberta leave Canada and become its own independent country or stay in Canada? And this is divided by past federal vote. Now, of course, in Alberta, 65% of voters chose the Conservative Party of Pierre Poilievre, and 35% either chose the Liberals or the NDP. The Liberals, I think, at 28%, and the NDP 6 or 7. Among Liberals, which is still 28% of the province, right? 99%. We never see that, Eric. 99% on any issue would vote to stay in Canada. Among NDPers, it's much tighter. It's 96%. It's much tighter. And among federal conservative voters, 48. Mm-hmm. So it's split down the middle among those who voted for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives last year on how they would vote in the clear question. And I really wonder. That's why I said it's not a vote between progressives and conservatives or even liberals. It's conservatives versus conservatives. Like, whatever Monsieur Carney or whatever the NDP leader says, it won't change any minds. The only way those numbers flip is if one side among the conservative family convinced the others.
Yeah, it's true, right? It's also like enough of the Liberal NDP voters actually go out to vote, but it is what decides the outcome here is largely going to be among the number of conservatives, UCP and federal conservatives who currently say that they would vote to stay. How many of them get peeled off to go to vote to remain or leave or start the process or whatever? And we've seen Pierre Poilievre already say he's going to campaign,
of course,
for the pro-Canada side. I be curious to see if all 30, how many are left now? 30. We got 3 Liberals, 1 NDP, so there's 33.
33, yeah.
Well, Matt Jenner, remember? 33 Conservative MPs. How many of them will also be taking time during the campaign to make the case for Canada? And if some of them decide that they don't want to, I mean, that's their right. But it will. Could you have a separatist MP within the Conservative Party, at least publicly? These are things that are going to have some repercussions. Maybe everybody will toe the line. People who within that caucus who intend to vote to start the process, maybe they'll just keep it to themselves.
Yeah.
But this has the potential to have so many other knock-on effects. Even if the referendum goes. As the polls suggest that it would reject starting the process. We don't know what's going to happen with the UCP afterwards, who's going to try to take over the party, if the separatists within it. If the UCP goes more to the Federalist side, do they leave and start their own party that now has a lot more legitimacy because of the fact that this referendum took place and could get let's say 30% of the vote. This is not going to end on October 19th, even if the referendum goes in the favor of Canada. And yeah, we're going to have to keep the watch on the numbers. And yeah, like I agree with you what you said at the beginning. If you think it's going to be 75-25, maybe it will be. I think these things tend to polarize and get closer as the time goes on. The 60-35 on from the Angus Reid Institute sounds far more plausible to me than some of the polls we've seen where it's like 71-27, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not so sure.
If I had a little dollar to bet here, and I don't, I would say 60-40. And then those on the 60 side would say, well, it puts the issue to bed, and no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. You just gave, hello, Marsouis. Sorry, you have a cat on your shoulder. Sorry. We're talking about serious stuff here, Eddie. But I would bet a 60-40 outcome, and then nothing gets settled, and nobody's happy. And talk about hurting your own province and the prospect of inviting investment. Like you have the provincial government, Madame Smith and her team. You have the federal government trying to find investors in the new pipeline and other projects, and now you have this. Businesses that will not want to pour billions of dollars into a uncertain outcome, uncertain politics, and also, by the way, the Trump team. I'm not saying Americans like that, but the Trump team, yeah, they have tried to weaken Canada for years now, and so this does it. This is not a good outcome. The democratic process. If I don't know what to say.
Well, and it's also just. If we take Danielle Smith at her word, it's not something she wants anyway. Again, if we take it back to the PQ, you could make the same kind of arguments for the PQ that right now there's not support for independence, so pushing referendum is only going to hurt the province in terms of uncertainty and investment, all this kind of stuff. Yeah. Like it's better to, if you're going to have a referendum, do it when there's an actual chance of winning, because then there's a legitimate chance to do it. But the PQ thinks that it is worth doing. Yeah. It is worth all of that turmoil because independence will be worth it. Here you have the UCP leader who does not think it's a good idea to do this and is doing it anyway. That's the real oddity here. And again, like if it passed, is Danielle Smith going to be the person who is negotiating the exit from the country when she campaigns against it? A lot of it just doesn't make sense. Aside from the conclusion that it is a pressure release valve that they think they need for the party. And I don't know, maybe some things are more important than party unity. But they put it right in the name, so they got to make sure that the party remains united. Anyway, this is going to be going to be a wild ride, and we'll keep following the polls on this. That'll be the guide here for us, and we'll continue to see. I think, as you said, this is largely going to be an internal conservative debate where supporters of the other parties very clearly on one side and not going to move. Again, just 95% support for something. You don't see that very often. All right, let's move to the federal numbers. Last week we chatted a little bit about the two tracking polls, Nanos and Liaison. They were showing a dip for the Liberals. We were like, is this real? Is this nothing? Is this something? We got the updates from Liaison, Nanos, and then we got two new polls from Palace and Abacus.
What do we think?
Kind of seems noisy now.
It's kind of noisy. So the two trackers, Liaison and Liaison and Nanos, both continued on their way, meaning it's still a big Liberal lead. But the Liberals are now below the 45% mark, whereas they had been above that mark in the two trackers. Now we have Liaison, 43 Liberal, 31 Conservative. 31 is bad.
That's the thing. Like even these, we mentioned last week, the numbers weren't great for the Liberals, but they weren't any better for the Conservatives.
No. Nanos 41 Liberal, 33 Conservative, so an 8-point lead. And then we had two polls, one from Palace and one from Abacus, and they both showed good numbers for the Liberals. So Palace data has 45 Liberal, 32 Conservatives. And Abacus, which had the closest numbers for a long stretch this winter, now has a 12-point lead for the Liberals. 47% Liberal and 35 Conservative. So That means that in these polls, the Liberals are somewhere between 41 and 47, so you could say mid-40s. And the Conservatives between 31 and 35. The best poll for the Conservatives is 35.
Yeah.
And also, we should say the NDP here, 11 Liaison, 13 Nanos, 11 Palace, and 8 Abacus. Seems to be a bit better on average, at least for the NDP. Nothing to go crazy about, but still getting closer to double digits in the aggregate here. Is there something that caught your eye in these numbers, Eric?
No, not exactly. It was. I know.
Okay, move on.
But again, like I said it last week, you have the Nanos poll, which is a 4-week poll. You have Liaison, which is a 2-week poll. Both Palace and Abacus were done within those time periods, right? Yeah. So, if you wanted to look at Nanos and be like, this is a negative trend line for the Liberals, they're in trouble, maybe. But Palace and Abacus were in the same universe as Nanos and found, for Abacus, the best score that the Liberals have had under Carney. Yeah. Government approval was, I think, at 59 or 50. Yeah. I think 59%, which is the highest they've ever had it. Even like during the pandemic or the Trudeau honeymoon, he never got higher than 57. So, like, these two things can't both exist in the same universe, which makes it feel like it's probably noise and it's somewhere in between. So I think that's kind of what you have to conclude here when you see these kinds of numbers. And also, even the decent polls, let's say decent polls for the Conservatives because the gap wasn't as big, all 4 of these polls, now the Nanos numbers are paywalled, but just if we're speaking generally, all 4 of these polls had the Liberals above 50% in Ontario.
Yeah.
Like that is a crush. That when you start to think about what the Liberals are now, certainly not of the progressive left kind of style of Justin Trudeau, much more in the business-friendly centrist Jean Chrétien style. And you know where Jean Chrétien's Liberals did really, really well? Ontario, winning 100 seats, sometimes only leaving 1 or 2 or 3 for the other parties. Maybe that's the same kind of thing we're going to see here, where it doesn't really matter what's happening in a lot of these other places. If the Liberals are winning 100 seats in Ontario, they're already more than halfway there. And that's kind of what these numbers are showing at the moment.
Palace data in Ontario, 52 Liberal, 31 Conservative. That's 100 seats, right? Or close to 100 seats in Ontario for the Liberals. Liaison, 51-31. Abacus, closer, 51-36. Just the best poll for the Conservatives in the latest round was a 15-point lead for the Liberals in Ontario, a province the Liberals won by just under 5 points in the election. So, yeah, it's not all about Ontario, but such margins would move a lot of seats, would make a lot of light blue seats into light red. And when you look at the projection map that I have on 338, there's a lot of red and pink on Ontario right now, to the point where it looks uncomfortable.
Looks like weird.
It's kind of weird because you see, from Peterborough all the way to Hamilton, it's basically all red or pink. It's that's strange.
And the rural areas around London and
you expect some blue
and
spots in there. So, yes. So, and also the good numbers in Quebec. We should say that there's a question now with Monsieur Guilbeault, and we'll get to Monsieur Guilbeault in a second here. But with Monsieur Guilbeault leaving, perhaps, I don't know, Liberals in Quebec would go down a little bit. Well, we haven't seen such numbers right now. So Abacus had a 19-point lead for the Liberals, 46 Liberal, 27 Bloc Québécois. Palace had a smaller lead, 13, 41 Liberal, 28 Bloc Québécois. And Liaison has had strange Quebec numbers of late, 37 Liberal, so much lower, and 27 Bloc Québécois. So the Liberals are still comfortably in majority territory, but the Conservatives in the low 30s, I did not expect this. And to make a link with what we just talked about, the Alberta referendum, Alberta Conservatives, including MPs, you said, will they keep mum about their intentions on how they will vote? I guess Conservatives everywhere else in the country will wonders, like, hey, are you a separatist? Or do you support a united Canada? Because that could change my vote if you're in Nova Scotia or in British Columbia.
Ontario's always been sort of the, whoever was the unity candidate usually has a huge advantage over everybody else. We saw that in the Chrétien years. We saw that in the past before, right? So it's... they can. They're not. The Conservatives aren't doing really well right now in Alberta. I mean, comparatively speaking, they're still like 50% or so. Yeah. A lot of that seems to be, I think, again, some of that polling kind of mirage is that there's some difficulty in finding Conservatives in Alberta, but also we're seeing, like in the liaison poll, somewhat unlikely numbers for other parties, for the PPC.
Yeah.
This could be, though, a reflection of that of separatists who aren't keen on supporting the Federalist Conservative Party now. But I think this is, again, we've talked about it, I think 2 weeks ago. It's an opportunity for Pierre Poilievre. There's some risk here, but if you want to shore up your numbers in Ontario, being Captain Canada, as Doug Ford showed, a really good way to do that.
Yes,
will it help you in Alberta? I don't know, but they don't really need to. That's not where they need the help right now. So we'll see if they're gonna juice their approach at all. You mentioned Guilbeault.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Okay, so Monsieur Guilbeault, and formerly an environment minister who was with Équiterre. Well, I think he founded Équiterre a few years ago, and he was an activist before that. So, I mean, whether you agree or not with him, but his intentions were sincere. This was not a guy who just cosplayed an environmentalist. He really was one. Now, he was elected in Laurier-Sainte-Marie, which had not been Liberal in a long time before that. It was the longtime seat of Gilles Duceppe, the Bloc leader. And when Gilles Duceppe was ousted, it was by the NDP. It was Madame Laverdière of the NDP who won in 2011 in the Orange Wave and won again in 2015. And the Bloc has always, this seat is going to come back to us at some point, right? In the last election, they finish a distant third. Now, Laurier-Sainte-Marie, the borders have changed a little bit since the time of Gilles Duceppe. It took a part of Old Montreal, which tends to be a bit redder. So the results last year in Laurier-Sainte-Marie was 52% Liberal, 19 NDP, and 15 Bloc Québécois. Is there a way that the Liberals drop this, Eric?
I don't think so, because someone else has to win it, and I just don't see who else wins it. The NDP, I mean, maybe they could find a really good candidate and have a shot, but they would need to have a really good candidate, like a Valérie Plante or something like that. It can't just be like, they had Nima Machouf, who's well known in Montreal, but she's been the candidate for 3 elections and hasn't been able to win it.
Hasn't come close.
So and the NDP would need to get like 35-40% in this riding to win it. It's hard to see. And for the Bloc, I put it up on the RIT this morning of results in Laurier-Sainte-Marie for the last few elections. Since 2011, it is a literal straight line down for the Bloc. They've just been dropping support. I ran the numbers. Back in 2008, they won 6 seats on the island of Montreal. And in 4 other seats, they got at least 20% of the vote. All right. And there were fewer seats on the island of Montreal back then, but you got 10 seats where they did, well enough.
Yeah.
In the last election, they won only a single seat, and it's the one that's kind of the furthest as you can get from downtown Montreal, and only in 2 others they got over 20% of the vote. The party is just not an island of Montreal party as it was under Gilles Duceppe when their leader was from the island of Montreal. Yves-François Blanchet the party is much more of a suburban and rural party now. It's not the same kind of social democratic, progressive friendly party that we saw in the past. And also you could say that about sort of the sovereignty movement now. It used to be very much a progressive bastion, right, for the sovereignist party. Intellectuals and all this kind of stuff would support sovereignty. Now it's not as clear that is the case. So the demographics have shifted, and to me that kind of takes Laurier-Sainte-Marie out of the running, unless, again, they find a really good candidate.
What is strange also, well, not strange, but interesting, is that this is not a language thing, because Laurier-Sainte-Marie is still very much francophone. And yet the Bloc hit 15% in the last election. So, what also adds to the intrigue here is that if Monsieur Guilbeault officially resigns his seat somewhere in the summer, That means that two neighboring seats, meaning Laurier-Sainte-Marie and Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie, right next to each other, perhaps you could argue the region of the whole country that is more to the left electorally. Yes, they voted
I think
for
these
the
were the
Liberals.
two worst conservative ridings, weren't they?
Yes, they were low single digits. I think Rosemont was 4% last election. Maybe it was a little more in 2025. These are very urban. Lots of students, lots of university graduates. If you want to use that word woke, you can. I wouldn't really qualify that, but if you want to use it, those are very woke ridings, right? Where we don't see the PQ winning this, but could the Bloc? I mean, is Yves-François Blanchet going to campaign hard if there's those two ridings? I think they could have a shot in Rosemont, especially with a split vote. Laurier-Sainte-Marie, bit of a stretch. But it's going to be interesting. I mean, if you're the Bloc and this happens, this is an opportunity to go back on the map, right? It sends a message, even if you have good results on the island of Montreal, the Francophone, the heart, the dense parts of Montreal that are Francophones. So I think this sets up a very interesting by-election night at some point, either in the fall or maybe early winter. The government has 6 months after the resignation to start the election. So it could be in February, I guess. But we're going to follow that because that could be interesting. I heard this week, and I mentioned something on the Discord, more resignation announcements coming. None have occurred, but I think we're going to follow this because Guilbeault is not the only one who is uncomfortable with the current path the Liberals are taking on the environment, and I wonder if more will follow, but we will see.
And also with the Quebec election, maybe some people might want to take their shot, like Alexandre Boudreau, at the National Assembly instead. So
that's right.
Hey, right now we got at least 4 that are supposed to happen.
Future by-elections?
Yeah, assuming everybody, assuming Naderskin-Smith goes, as he's promised to. Maybe we'll get a half dozen. That would be fun. Why don't we talk quickly about, we got 2 polls out of Ontario from Liaison and Abacus. They don't really show the same thing. Liaison had a tie, 37-37 for the Liberals and the PCs, the NDP at 20. Abacus was at 41 for the PCs, 31 for the Liberals, 17 for the NDP. And we also had some news out of Ontario where Naderskin-Smith appeal of the results in his nomination battle in Scarborough Southwest was denied. We got Navdeep Bains, who is joining the OLP race. Also Rob Chiranek, who announced that today. And Carolyn Mulrooney resigning, which I thought was interesting, at least for a few years, to stay out of the public eye. So I don't know if she's looking at Doug Ford's job or Pierre Poilievre's job, but just saying.
We love dynasties in this country, don't we? So, okay. So infighting, among the big parties, either conservative, progressive, PCs, liberal, is never good for the image. Like no party in the short term gains from infighting, and I think those numbers from Abacus that has the OLP going down a little bit and the PCs recovering, you have to make perhaps a straight line to say, well, it was pretty ugly what happened in the OLP. That nomination race, it was messy. It's not. I don't think it's entirely over yet. We will hear about it for many months. The OLP chooses a leader in November, right? So this is another 6 months to go. Interesting numbers. I don't think it tells us a lot, except that infighting is bad for a party. That's not news. That's not news at all.
Yeah, and we also remember that. As we often see in Ontario politics, there is a lot of cross-pollination between federal and provincial. So when I see really strong numbers for the Ontario Liberals, have they done much to earn it? Probably not too much. It makes me think that might be a little bit of a Carney afterglow. So when I see numbers that are more like an Abacus, makes a bit more sense. But either way, I think we can say that things are getting mildly more interesting in Ontario. As I said a few days ago, it's not cayenne, but it's maybe at least a little bit of pepper on top of the political scene in Ontario. And we got a poll out of Nova Scotia. Just want to mention this one from Abacus again, which they're now doing kind of quarterly-ish polls. 38% for the Tim Houston PCs, down 10 points since January. The NDP is at 31 and the Liberals at 23. I mean, it's like a warning sign here for Tim Houston.
Yes,
but
it is.
He'd still win an election right now.
He still win easily, but what did he get into in the election? The high 40s in terms of vote? No, it was in the 50s, right? So it was a really great victory for the PCs in the last election. This is maybe a regression to the mean, where it's not supposed to be sustainable to be that high. But again, you see here, these numbers really look like what we saw in Ontario for the longest time in the early Doug Ford days, right? A split opposition between the NDP and the Liberals, which would lead to an easy majority for the PCs. But when you see that much movement, even if it's a smaller sample, I think it's 600 respondents. Is that? Yeah, that's right, 600 respondents. A 10-point swing in 3 months is notable, and so it'll be interesting to see at the end of the summer to see if the government recovers. That's about it for Nova Scotia, which would have an election in the fall of 28, so there's plenty of time.
Yeah, and we got a by-election coming in Nova Scotia on June 23rd in Shetty Camp, Marguerite's Pleasant Bay, which is a new riding that was created mid-term. It was created after a court ruling, and the government decided to create the riding to represent Acadians on Cape Breton. I've never seen a riding created out of nothing in the middle of between elections, but anyway, it'll be a little bit of a test, I guess. The PCs won this area, so it'll be a way to kind of gauge if the polling numbers are picking up some real kind of things happening on the ground.
Should we just
one
mention...
last comment?
Yeah, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, were we going to British Columbia or?
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. I was just going to say very briefly because there will be a new leader of the BC Conservative Party on Saturday. We don't really have anything new to say about it, though. We haven't seen any new numbers. We talked about polling that had been done by the Elliott campaign a few weeks ago. That's about the last set of numbers we've seen. There's no fundraising numbers. So really, it's like there seems to be 3 candidates who have the best shot.
Yeah.
And after that, like it could be a big surprise, I think, on Saturday, whatever the outcome is.
Eric, does the leader after the first ballot win this? It's the question, because I talked to British Columbians who are involved in this race while I was in Ottawa 2 weeks ago, and they all tell me that Madame Elliott would probably finish first on the first ballot, but there could be anything but Elliott vote going, and I think we could have the second place or even the third place on the first ballot to win this if this materializes. But I really thought, we mentioned this many times on our podcast in recent weeks, Eric. I thought we would get more numbers, and maybe we will. Like today is Thursday, so perhaps there will be a final poll. But this is going to be very interesting, considering how Monsieur Eby's NDP is going. This could be the next premier of BC that wins the leadership on Saturday. So to be continued.
All right, do we still have time for a quiz?
I think we have. I mean, it's a short quiz that I have for you today, and it's thematic. What did we spend most of our time talking about today? It's about referenda. I think we have to say plural. It's about referendums. So I thought I would go into the history of referendums in Canada, in the provinces, and then I realized a lot of it is about booze.
Yeah.
I did not think. I mean, most referendums held in Canada were about alcohol 100 years ago. So anyway, I thought it was really funny. I did not know that. I knew there was a period of prohibition that led to la Commission des Liqueurs and other provinces banning interprovincial liquor exchange. That still is a problem to this day, basically. But I just thought I would ask you. It's a problem,
but it's an issue that hasn't.
Well, it's an issue. Yeah, it's an issue. So, Eric, the first referendum in the history of Canada post-Confederation was about prohibition. Do you know that referendum? What do you know about this referendum?
The first one.
Yeah. Was it held on... You go ahead, yeah.
Was it in 1898?
September 29, 1898. And the question was, are you in favor of the passing of an act prohibiting the importation, manufacture, or sale of spirits, wine, ale, beer, cider, and all other alcoholic liquors for use as beverages? Why would you? Okay, so
because you could use them for medicinal purposes. That was still legal.
Yeah, exactly, medicinal purposes.
That's serious. You could get it at the pharmacy.
So at the time, there were 7 provinces in Canada and 1 territory. We will exclude the territory right now. Do you know how many provinces voted in favor of prohibition?
I think it was 6 that voted in favor and 1 that didn't.
Okay, tell me more.
And the one that didn't was Quebec.
Okay, I'm trying to click the link here because the results are very, very funny. So, in favor of prohibition. Oh no, that's my second question. Okay, which province had I'm going to tell you that after. Which province had the highest support for prohibition with a whopping 89%?
Oh my God.
89% in favor of prohibition. Which province would that be?
I'm going to guess it's like PEI.
How do you know? Yes, it is PEI.
Yeah?
Incredible. 89 to 11 voted in favor.
Wow.
The second highest, what would it be? The second highest in favor of prohibition.
I have no idea. It's Nova Scotia.
It is Nova Scotia. 86.5. It was also Manitoba at 81. When you look at the results, every province every maritime province voted strongly in favor. British Columbia was 55 in favor. Ontario was 57 in favor. And Quebec was 19 in favor. 1981 against. We wanted to drink booze. I read up on this because of preparing this quiz. And it was mostly Catholics, basically. I thought it was just Francophone, Anglophones. But no, they said it was also Catholics. Anyway, that's interesting. The next referendum...
When you do communion, you got to get the wine, right?
Well, you gotta, right? There must have been exceptions for this, but anyway, so we love our booze in Quebec. The next referendum in Canada was held on April 27, 1942. I'm sure that you know that referendum quite well, Eric. Can you tell the listeners what it was? So the question
that was the... it was a referendum, it was a plebiscite, I think, the term they used, but... to release the Liberal government from its pledge not to impose conscription. And it was the very famous line from Mackenzie King,
not necessary.
Conscription if necessary, but not necessarily conscription.
Pretty smart. Good language from politicians. The question was, are you in favor of releasing the government from any obligations arising out of any past commitments restricting the methods of raising men for military service? Quite the results. So I would like to question you on the results of this referendum. There were 9 provinces at the time. Of course, Newfoundland, Labrador was not there yet. Do you remember how many voted in favor of releasing the government of obligations?
I think it's probably, again, 7-1, with Quebec being the only one voting against releasing.
Well, it was 8-1, yes, because 9 provinces.
Oh,
8-1.
Yes, okay,
yeah, that's right. So I'm looking at the results of the outside of Quebec. Alberta was 71 in favor. British Columbia 80. Manitoba 80. New Brunswick was closer. It was 70. Nova Scotia 77. Ontario 84 in favor. And in Quebec, the results were 72-28 against. I remember from my history classes that Quebecers were against this conscription. I did not think that the contrast was that stark. My next question to you: of all the no votes in that referendum, what's the proportion that was from Quebec?
That's good. So I mean, if they had 23, or you said it was 70.
72-28. 72-28.
Yeah. So they, and what it represented, like, I don't know. I'm going to say that they were 2/3 at least.
63%. So very close to 2/3. I'm not giving points today. It's just it's a quiz formatif, as we say, just for fun. But really not in favor. And so I really wanted to build a quiz on referendum until I realized it was all about booze or Quebec separation. I mean, there was also a referendum in BC to change the electoral system, but this is too easy, you know this. Well, anyway, I'm gonna try to build something else on the lead up to the Alberta referendum, a quiz more formal with points, with gold and silver and bronze for you. This was my last week at my college. I did not have time to dig into this, but I love reading about this. You see old posters, you see campaign slogans, and also, what the hell, prohibition? I do not understand that. Clearly, I'm from another era, but that 80% of the population would vote to ban booze. What the hell? Anyway, so that was my trivia for today. Past of referendum. Eventually, oh yeah, there was also the Charlottetown card, but we'll get that at some point. It was more complicated. So,
all right, why don't we do the number of the week? I'll go. Mine is just going to be 58%. It goes to what we were saying at the beginning of the podcast. Angus Reid asked, Smith is only calling this a referendum to appease the separatists in her party. Do you agree or disagree? 58% of Albertans agreed that this is largely being driven by internal dynamics within her own party. Even a third of past UCP voters agreed that this was not about anything else other than dealing with the separatists within the UCP. So we'll see how this is going to play out. But again, this is it's an internal fight within an internal fight, and the rest of us outside of the country, outside of the province, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Absolutely. My number of the week is 50% plus one. So this talk about whether this question in Alberta has to abide by the Clarity Act rose the question of if it does a result of 50% plus one, is it enough to split up the country? Now, Mr. Carney was on the record this week saying, no, of course it's not enough. We don't know what it is, but we know it's not enough. And Le Journal de Montréal, Le Devoir, La Presse, all had articles on the front page, and you had Simon Jeanin Barrette, former Justice Minister with the CEQ here, saying it's the Quebec law that applies if we hold a referendum. The federal government has nothing to say about it. This is going to stir up a big fight throughout the country, in both Quebec and Alberta. And I'm not sure if the PQ wanted this in the lead up to the Quebec campaign coming this fall. This is going to be very interesting. The 50% plus one is highly debatable on all sides, but just the fact that we have this debate may not be good news for the separatists or the sovereigntists in Quebec. So, it's not the last time you and I exchange on this, and there will be more polls, and we will follow numbers because it's going to get heated. So
yeah, and referendums are of course all about numbers, and you just need to get more than the other one, and that's it.
Yep.
So anyway, that'll be dominating the next few months. So we're going to focus on that. We talked that we might have a few words about the ongoing hockey playoffs. Did you have much to say about it?
Let me do that quick. The Habs tank is empty. Carolina is outplaying the Habs so badly, but Carolina is not that much better than the Habs. The tank is empty. That team is not ready, but watch out because the Habs will be back next year. It may not be over, but we all think it is. Last night was pretty ugly, and it's too bad. And now we have to look at Vegas winning the cup. Oh, God. Ugh. Okay. Ugh, I know, right? So,
final of Vegas and Carolina. Just
yeah.
That just stabs a dagger in my 15, 12-year-old heart of the teams that are competing for the Stanley Cup. Bring back the Hartford Whalers. Come on, let's get something more fun. But I watched it last night, and it was over in that first period. And I'm such a softie. I watched the game, and they show the shots of the crowd, and I'm thinking about all the poor people who paid tickets, probably more than they could afford. They brought their kids there. This is gonna be a great night. God, that's got to be the most depressing thing.
Yesterday was Jakub Dobeš's birthday, and his team gave him no goals to work with for his birthday. So, that's kind of stinking.
That was his gift. Hey, if you like stats and stuff like this, what do you think is the usefulness of this one? Ron McLean said it during the intermission that there's been 4 times. I think it was 4 times that a Canadians goalie, was celebrating their birthday in a playoff game, and all 4 times they lost. I mean, I think that's pretty incontrovertible. I don't think there's any way to... They should have played Fowler, I guess. They should have.
He would have been the first one. Oh, well. Next year, on May 27th, the Habs will win a playoff game. So there you go.
All right. Well, I hope you have to eat your words and they come back. It's going to be epic the next few days. But anyway, we will be back in a week. We'll have our... if you want to support the podcast, and we had a mailbag episode earlier this week with lots of interesting questions from our members. And if you would like to listen to that, if you'd like to be able to participate in the mailbags in the future, you can go to thenumberspod.ca and you get early and ad-free access to all the episodes, and you support our little podcast, which we appreciate. And I think we're going to be back with a bonus episode next week. Not really sure what it'll be just yet, but we'll figure something out. But until then, Philippe, hope you have a good weekend. Everybody watching and listening, thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Merci Eric. Have a great weekend.